Hello, I'm David Creelman. I'm CEO of Creelman Research, and today we're going to talk about making a business case for analytics. Now, I've been working in the HR space for about 30 years. It's actually interesting because the very first thing I did in HR with the Hay Group was what we call today predictive analytics, and it had to do with using a questionnaire that an employee would fill out to predict job size. But I've studied lots of topics in management, and most recently I've been absorbed in consulting and researching in the world of analytics and evidence-based management. Now, I imagine many of you are like me. We've got a quantitative background, but the challenge we face is that when we go from our work in analytics, sort of our expert technical skill, to making a business case, it can be a big leap. And so I'm hoping to help you understand how to approach making a business case. Now, a good question in analytics is always, why are we doing this? What are we trying to solve for? That's always the place to start before we get into the specifics of what we're going to analyze. So before we get into building a business case, let's be clear as to why we want analytics in the first place. Now, emotionally, maybe what we want is to have some cool tools and to do some things that are going to be good for our career in the long term. Now, that's okay, and we should recognize and acknowledge that emotion, but it's going to get in your way when you're making the business case because no one really cares about you doing something cool or useful other than you. So what you've got to figure out is where analytics are going to be good for the organization. What may pop to your mind because we're talking about HR analytics are things like improving engagement, retention, cost per hire. Now, that's a far better starting point than running from the emotion of, boy, I'd really like to have analytics, or we think analytics are really good. If we're going to be able to improve engagement, that's better. But you know what? Those are still not really business reasons. Those are not business outcomes, they're HR outcomes. And they're not the things that matter most to senior leaders or to the stakeholders who are going to give the thumbs up or thumbs down on investing in HR analytics. So let's pause for a moment and see how can we get beyond those personal goals or those HR metrics in terms of what kind of outcomes are going to matter to business leaders, because that's going to be the basis of making our business case. Okay, well, what's a business issue that would matter to the CEO as opposed to an HR issue like engagement or retention, which do matter to the CEO, but not quite in the same way as the things I'm going to list now? Well, one business issue might be growing the business. And maybe that specifically depends on faster hiring of a sales force in Europe. Or maybe the CEO is concerned with sustaining the business over the long run. And well, that in part is going to mean having a strong pipeline of leaders, and maybe that depends on doing a better job of assessing who in the organization has high potential. Another big concern of the CEO and the top leadership team might be an upcoming acquisition, because we know that most acquisitions don't turn out well. So if there's anything that we can do around understanding culture and culture integration, and that's going to make the acquisition more likely to be successful or more successful, well, that's a real concern. Here's one I heard the other day from a CHRO, which surprised me. Her concern had to do with better management of inventory. Now, it's not her concern as an HR leader, it's her concern as part of the business, because the business was concerned with managing inventory. All right, well, what are the levers to affect that? Well, it's things like incentives that will affect behavior. It's how we design the jobs, how we communicate, and so on. Here's another one, managing cybersecurity. That's a big business issue. And it may not be top of mind as to why that would be an HR analytics issue. So let me talk you through why cybersecurity might be a great rationale for HR analytics. Okay, what are the levers that you might use to improve cybersecurity? Well, IT has its own levers like firewalls and so on, but so much of cybersecurity depends on human behavior. And that means levers like who we hire, how we train them, how we manage them, how we reward them, and the kind of culture we create are all very important to cybersecurity. So most of the levers on almost any business issue are HR levers. And how do we pull the right HR levers? Well, we want to do that based on data and analytics. So that's the basic storyline. We understand what matters most to senior leaders, the business issues that are top of mind with them. We understand the HR levers that are going to affect that issue. And then the case revolves around the fact that if we don't have analytics, we're not going to be able to pull these levers as effectively as we should be able to do so. Okay, so let's see where this approach is taking us. And I think it really changes our stance and maybe what we had in mind when we thought about approaching the challenge of building a business case. So what we're starting with is we're looking at a few issues that are of primary importance to powerful stakeholders, such as ensuring the upcoming acquisition is successful, such as improving cybersecurity. There are lots of different issues that will depend on your organization. We're saying, hey, I know you're really concerned with cybersecurity. I can help you with that. Because many of the levers around cybersecurity are human levers, and we can figure out the right levers to pull with analytics. What did leaders say to that? They say, you're going to help us with that? Tell me what you need. Now consider how different that is from how we usually think about a business case. Usually we think of a business case as we're going hat in hand to leadership and begging for money. So we're flipping that around and we're saying, we're professional experts with a lot to offer, and we're going to help leaders achieve those really difficult, really important business goals, and we're going to partner with them to do that. So that's a huge shift. Now, it's not easy to do. Okay, everyone is locked into the more traditional idea of creating a slide deck and begging for money. But the target we want to aim for is that we are helping to the best of our ability. We're going to help the business achieve something they care a lot about. So let's nail this down. The starting point for making a business case is clarity around a few specific business goals that key stakeholders care about a lot. And it's the fact that analytics are going to help them achieve those key business goals that is the heart of the business case. Now let me talk about another key element of the stance you're taking as you're approaching building this business case. It's not about generating an ROI. And if you've taken an MBA, you may have been led to believe that business decisions are all about cranking out ROIs in a spreadsheet, and that's just not true. That's one of the real myths that people often learn in an MBA class. More often than not, if people say they want an ROI, what they often mean is just give me a reasonable argument, give me some numbers, show me something that makes me convinced that this is worth doing. They don't actually mean that they're going to base the decision on an ROI calculation. Furthermore, if you come forward with a spreadsheet and an ROI calculation, and that's your first and main step in making a business case, it's not going to convince anyone. They're just going to shoot holes in the numbers. Even if they agree with the numbers, they may just not be emotionally committed to the idea to support it. So a business case is not about creating a slide deck or calculating an ROI. It's change management. And change management is all about getting to know your stakeholders, getting to know what they care about, and gradually bringing them along so that they come to see that what you're proposing is going to be good for them. So don't think of a business case as being about ROI. Think about it as being a change management process that unfolds over a period of time. All right, so let's talk about where we go from here. So we've identified some key business issues. We've talked to stakeholders. We've been convincing them that this is something that is going to be valuable to them. We've been getting lots of input, moving this along. Now, they will at some point want something a little bit more solid than just this general conversation. So what are you shooting towards? Well, before we ever pull out the spreadsheet for an ROI, here's the kind of questions leaders are asking. What's the impact? Okay, what's going to be the impact of doing this analysis? How is it going to impact the business results? What do we need to do? Take me through step by step, the things we need to buy, the actions we need to take, who needs to be involved. It doesn't have to be highly detailed, but you say this is important. Maybe I agree with you that it's important. Now I need to know what it's going to take to do this. What do we need to do? What's it going to cost? Okay, we don't need a specific number, but give me a ballpark because I need to have some sense of cost for budgeting purposes. And how long will it take? Again, for planning purposes, I need a sense for how long it's going to take. So if we're able to go to leaders and help them understand the impact, what we need to do, what it will cost, and how long it will take. That's the guts of your business case. Now, here's one of the most useful things to know about business, is that often meetings and decision processes are a formality. So a business case is usually a formality after the decision to proceed has already been agreed to in principle. So, we're taught that we're going to make a pitch with a slide deck and spreadsheets, but that's not how it works. We've had the meeting before the meeting. I don't know if you've heard that phrase, but it's very important. We've had, in fact, a whole series of meetings before the meetings where we understand what people want and we've got them on side. We've explained to them those key bullet points I dealt with in the last slide. So when we go into that meeting with a more formal presentation, and we may well have an ROI spreadsheet as part of that formal presentation, we've already got people on side. And so this is a formality just to make sure that everybody agrees that we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Okay, well, I think now you've got the basic stance and the concepts of what you need to do to build a business case for analytics. So let me just share a couple of tips. One tip, how much detail is necessary? Again, it's very natural for analytically minded people to want to include a whole lot of detail. In general, less is better than more. So when we're thinking about the costs and we're going through it in our head, we say, we might need to hire a data scientist, $150,000. We're going to need to invest $40,000 in software, or we have to head over to that meeting that's going to take a cab, which is $20. Well, you don't need that $20. It's much easier for you and it's easier for the audience if you list out the big costs and then just have another category for miscellaneous. So don't add extraneous detail. It just gets in your way. Similarly, when we're thinking about the benefits, the reasons for it, generally fewer reasons are better than more. If you have 20 different reasons, that actually can be a warning sign that none of the reasons are very good and you're trying to overwhelm the lack of quality of the reasons with quantity of reason. Ideally, there's just one good reason in the business case to support the investment in analytics, in and of itself, enough to drive it forward. So again, less is better than more. And finally, as a tip, is as you're taking people through the business case, keep them focused on the business issue, what we're really trying to solve for here. And don't let them drive you off track by getting into the details. And people often do like to get into the details. So let's imagine you said, and we'll need a data scientist, it's about $150,000. And they say, well, wait a minute, is that number really right? I heard somebody got one for cheaper, I heard somebody got one for more. And this is where you don't want to get into an argument about the specific number. That's a distraction. If we're trying to have a successful acquisition, it doesn't really matter exactly what that cost for a data scientist is. So what you want to do is get people back on track. You say, we're making a decision of whether this approach is going to help us have better cybersecurity or faster revenue growth or more success with our mergers. Let's not get distracted by the details. It's, plus or minus 50%. Do we want to go ahead or not? I want to make sure that I touch on a caution here, which is that as much as we love analytics, it can be very difficult and you really don't want to fail. So you're making this business case. It's going to be approved because you've done a good job. You've done your change management homework. But we know that when we actually get to doing the project, it's going to be harder than it looks. So I know it feels like, well, if we overpromise on the deliverables, like we think, it's going to be really fantastic, it's going to do all these wonderful things. And if we underestimate the costs, if you overpromise, then you're likely to underdeliver. So what you want to do is underpromise and overdeliver. You're going to want to try to find some quick wins. I was talking to one client who's a large retailer who was doing some analytics on seasonal staff, and it sounded like such a good project because, when you have problems with seasonal staff, it affects what's going on in the stores. It has a direct impact on customer service. It's got a direct impact on operations costs, on the amount of headaches that are occurring for the store manager. And yet when they actually got into the analysis, the results weren't nearly as clean and helpful as they had thought they would be. So you just want to make sure that you don't set yourself up for failure by promising too much. And I think one thing that you can promise with great confidence is that we're going to go at this in a disciplined way. We're going to find out what is there to be found out and whether or not there's a lever we can pull. and we're going to learn a whole lot in the process. Focusing the business case on something that's going to be a quick win, something you're quite confident you can achieve, is a really good idea, particularly if you're relatively new and moving into HR analytics. Now, I'd like you to reflect on the overall approach I've taken here. And I always have anxiety because I know that what people are really hoping for in these kind of lessons are a real clear step-by-step, just tell me what I need to fill in on a form or what calculation I need to do, and then I'll have my business case and I can move forward. And what I've given you is really a rather different approach and a different stance than that. And I want to share a story from a number of years ago, is that I actually was in Japan and I had a chance to visit Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, where I met Professor Ikujiro Nanaka. And if you followed anything on knowledge creation, Dr. Nanaka is very famous for his Seki model of knowledge creation. And the funny thing is, almost before I said hello, he said, "Mr. Creelman, I'm not going to give you the 5-step process for knowledge creation." Now, why did he say that? I mean, even, as I say, almost before hello. The reason is that we often live in a world of technical knowledge. And it's things like how to create a balance sheet or how to calculate a standard deviation. Technical knowledge can be taught as a series of definite steps. People with an analytics mindset like technical know-how. And the reason Professor Nanaka was so adamant about saying he's not going to give me the 5 steps is because knowledge creation in an organization is too messy, too dependent on the specific situation, too humans for a simple 5-step process to ever be successful. And I'm saying that building a business case is like that too. So I've tried to share some guidelines, some ideas, some insights. But what you really need to do is, in your own specific situation, get out and have a lot of conversations with stakeholders, a lot of trial and error, and you're going to bring yourself and you're going to bring the stakeholders along until you agree that, gosh, this sounds like a really, really good idea. All right, well, I hope this has been helpful so far, so let me just summarize the big ideas. The first thing is to throw out the idea that making a business case involves sitting in your cubicle, coming up with a spreadsheet-based ROI and a convincing PowerPoint slide deck, and winning the day. Now, maybe in movies someone gets up and makes a brilliant pitch that wins over leadership, but that's rarely how it works in real life. What does work in real life is a change management process where you're out there understanding what stakeholders want, what those really big business issues are, and how you can help them get the results you want. So the heart of the business case is one or more specific business issues that leaders really care about, and how you're going to help them by pulling the right human levers. And the way you're going to be able to know how to pull those human levers is through analytics. So the business case itself, the slide deck, the spreadsheet, that's a formality that follows after you've got everyone fundamentally to agree that this sounds like the right thing to do for the organization. Thanks very much, and good luck with your projects.